Welcome to Aquatic Biology. Today, we are diving deep into the marine benthic zone. Imagine walking straight into the ocean from a sandy beach, keeping your feet firmly on the ground. As you walk deeper, leaving the sunlit shallows and entering the pitch-black abyss, you are traversing the benthic zone. It is essentially the basement of the ocean, a continuous underwater landscape composed of sand, rock, and mud. This zone is critical to our planet, and by the end of this lecture, you will understand both its ecological significance and the intense physical forces that govern life at the bottom of the sea. Let us begin our descent. Now that we have a picture of this underwater landscape, let us define it formally. The marine benthic zone is the ecological region at the absolute lowest level of any marine body of water. It includes the sediment surface and even the layers just below it. Think of it like a dense forest floor. Just as a forest floor collects fallen leaves, the benthic zone collects all the dead organic matter that sinks from the waters above. This constant rain of nutrients makes it a fascinating environment. And importantly, it is not just the deep ocean. The benthic zone spans all depth zones, meaning it exists in a sunlit, shallow coral reef just as much as it does in a freezing, dark oceanic trench. Understanding the environment naturally leads us to the life forms that inhabit it. The creatures that call this zone home are collectively referred to as benthos, a term derived from a Greek word meaning the depth of the sea. Because the benthic zone is defined by its physical substrate, organisms are categorized by how they interact with the sediment. We have epifauna, which are animals that live directly on top of the seafloor surface, like crabs and sea stars. Then we have infauna, which are creatures like clams and worms that burrow deep into the mud and sand. Unlike fish swimming freely in the open water, these benthic organisms are intimately tied to the ocean floor and must adapt to its specific physical conditions. Beyond just being a habitat, this zone plays an absolutely critical role in the global ecosystem and our human economy. First and foremost, it acts as the ocean's ultimate recycling center. Decomposers here break down the dead organic matter sinking from above, returning vital nutrients to the food web. Without this process, the oceans would quickly run out of nutrients and dead material would pile up endlessly. Furthermore, the benthic zone is a massive carbon sink. It traps carbon in sediments for millions of years, which helps regulate the Earth's climate and slow down global warming. In our daily lives, it is incredibly important for commercial fisheries, providing highly valued seafood like crabs, lobsters, scallops, and bottom-dwelling fish such as flounder. To truly grasp the scale of what we have discussed, let us look at this cross-section of the ocean. This diagram beautifully illustrates how the benthic zone forms the continuous foundational floor of the marine environment. Starting on the left at the shoreline, you can see the shallow continental shelf. As we move deeper, the floor drops sharply at the continental slope, eventually flattening out into the vast abyssal plain at depths of 3,000 to 6,000 meters. Notice the light blue area above? That is the pelagic zone, the open water. But the brown highlighted region at the very bottom, spanning every single depth, is our benthic zone. The small icons represent the benthos we just talked about, living at all these different depths. Having seen the vast depths the benthic zone covers, we must now consider the extreme physical challenges organisms face down there. The physical environment of this zone is harshly dictated by two main factors: immense hydrostatic pressure and the rapid loss of sunlight. As you go deeper, you are adding the weight of more and more water directly above you, creating crushing forces. Simultaneously, Water absorbs and scatters sunlight, meaning it gets darker very quickly, leaving most of the marine benthic zone in perpetual darkness. To survive these extreme conditions, life has been forced to adapt in extraordinary ways, developing specialized cellular structures and unique metabolic pathways. Let us explore the mathematics behind the first of these challenges: pressure. This brings us to the mathematical representation of hydrostatic pressure. The formula on your screen calculates the exact pressure an organism experiences at any depth. Conceptually, it tells us that the total pressure at the ocean floor is simply the pressure of the air pushing on the ocean's surface, plus the weight of the water column above the floor. In this equation, P represents the total absolute pressure in pascals. P0 is the atmospheric pressure at the surface. The Greek letter rho stands for the density of seawater. The symbol G is the acceleration due to gravity, and H represents the depth in meters. If the depth H increases, the total pressure P increases dramatically. Let us see how this works in a real scenario. Before we find the total pressure, let us calculate just the pressure exerted by the water itself. Imagine a specialized deep-sea crab living in the abyssal benthic zone at a depth of 4,000 meters. We are given the depth, the density of seawater, and gravity. Our first step is to find the water pressure by multiplying density, gravity, and depth. We plug in 1,025 for density, 9.81 for gravity, and 4,000 for depth. Multiplying these together gives us 40,221,000 pascals. This massive number represents the immense weight of the 4-kilometer-thick layer of water pressing down on the ocean floor. But this is not the final total pressure. Now that we have the water pressure, we must account for the atmosphere. The crab feels the weight of both the water and the air above it. We take our water pressure and add the constant surface atmospheric pressure, which is 101,325 pascals. Adding these together gives us a total absolute pressure of 40,322,325 pascals. Physically, this means that every square meter of the crab's shell is supporting over 40 million newtons of force. This is roughly 398 times greater than the pressure we feel at sea level. It perfectly demonstrates why these organisms need highly specialized, pressure-resistant physiology to survive. Moving from pressure to our second major physical challenge, we must look at sunlight. The availability of light determines whether plants and algae can grow on the bottom. We model this using the Beer-Lambert law for light attenuation. Conceptually, this formula states that light decreases exponentially as you go deeper because the water absorbs and scatters the photons. In the equation, I sub z represents the light intensity reaching a specific depth. I0 is the initial surface light intensity. The constant E is the base of the natural logarithm. The symbol K is the light attenuation coefficient, which measures how quickly the water absorbs light. If the water becomes murkier, K increases, and the light reaching the bottom drops very rapidly. Let us apply this formula to a real biological scenario. Suppose we are studying a shallow benthic zone, featuring a coral reef at a depth of 20 meters. The surface light intensity is 1,000 watts per square meter. Because it is coastal water, it is slightly murky, giving it an attenuation coefficient of 0.1 per meter. We want to find out exactly how much solar energy is available for the symbiotic algae living inside the corals. First, we set up our Beer-Lambert equation and substitute our values into the exponent. We multiply negative 0.1 by the depth of 20 meters. This simplifies our exponent to -2. Now we are ready to calculate the final intensity. Continuing our calculation, we evaluate e to the power of -2. This gives us approximately 0.1353. Conceptually, this decimal tells us that only about 13.5% of the surface light successfully penetrates down to the 20-meter mark. Finally, we multiply our initial surface intensity of 1,000 by this decay factor. The result is 135.3 watts per square meter. This physical result tells us that despite being relatively shallow, the murky water has absorbed a massive portion of the sunlight. However, this remaining light is still sufficient for specialized benthic corals to photosynthesize and thrive. We have covered a lot of ground today, from the sunlit shallows to the crushing depths. Let us review the most important ideas. First, the marine benthic zone is the foundational floor of the ocean. It is a vital ecological region that recycles nutrients and stores carbon. Second, the physical environment is extreme. Organisms must survive immense hydrostatic pressure that increases linearly with depth, requiring incredible physiological adaptations. Finally, light attenuates exponentially as it travels through water, meaning most of the benthic zone is in perpetual darkness, restricting plant life to the shallowest edges. Understanding these physical and biological connections is essential, as the benthic zone forms the literal bedrock upon which the rest of the ocean's ecosystems rely. Excellent work today!